So tell me about what you're doing with your organization. Yeah. And then how does that relate to the Bronx?
Yeah. So like with Ghetto Gastro, the reason that it started was like, food for me has always been like an escape for me. You know, my mother, we bonded over going out to restaurants and eating out. She was one of those single parents that was going to school, working a job, but we spent our quality time going out to eat because she was an epicurious person. So I got it honestly from her. And as I was like a young adult going out to eat in Manhattan, I often saw, or like you heard like hip hop playing on the soundtrack of a restaurant, right? But then when you look around the restaurant, you don't see black or brown people dining. And then you look in the kitchen, you didn't see many black or brown people working in the kitchen except maybe the dishwasher. Right. So I was like, all right, what's the way that we could use food as a medium in a language to celebrate the culture of the Bronx, which is largely hip hop, and also like kind of create this Pan-African idea of food, taking things from the past and bringing it into the future.
And the book, you've just done a book.
We did just do
I just did a book, so we can both talk about our book.
Yeah. And
the River Cafe lookbook.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I was like, when I looked at it, I'm like, oh, we're speaking the same language.
Sort of our book was really trying to think of how we could inspire young people to cook, but actually anybody, any age. And the idea was that very often you open a book and a cookbook, and you see a recipe which is very long, and it might put you off actually making because it looks intimidating, it looks so many ingredients. And so we thought, what if we didn't put a recipe in until page 117, and we just put photographs in the beginning, for the first sort of 115 pages of the food. And then somebody might say, I want to make that. We went through the archives, photographer, and then match the food. So it's kind of, a fun idea.
I love the pairing of the food and like the lifestyle photography.
Yeah.
Like, so it could be a river, a highway.
A pink telephone next to strawberry sorbet.
Yeah, like for us, like because my vocation is more of a visual vocation and my partners like have the culinary background. I'm like, how do we tell a story with these recipes? So bringing in like photographs, bringing in artwork from our friends, like to really tell a cohesive 360 vision with the Black Power Kitchen. So I definitely feel like our books are relatives. So with the book, what we really wanted to do, because Ghetto Gastro is such an abstract project and concept, we wanted to approach it like if we were really trying to distill what the ethos is of our project, how do we put that between the pages? So we approached Black Power Kitchen like, if this was our first book and our last book, how do we give the people enough? And it's really like, when we started with the outline, we wanted to start with the Bronx, of course, which is our foundation, but also look back to Africa and like how that connects with the different foods that are celebrated in different regions. So looking at the Caribbean, the South America, like, and then also, because we don't have a restaurant, a lot of our stuff is international. So our travels have definitely changed our perspective, like trips to Thailand, trips to Italy, trips to Japan have informed how we approach and cook. So we wanted to really celebrate all of these things. We did a chapter dedicated to our mothers, because like the foundation of all of us are Black women. So how do we celebrate them?
And so I always knew Rose. She was older than I was. She had children who were older, but I always knew her. And, we went to live in Paris because my husband built the Pompidou Center, and she went to live in Italy. And then when I came back, I wasn't sure what I was going to do, having worked on the building. I was a graphic designer. And we knew that we didn't want to have an office in the middle of London that was just in a kind of, tower. We wanted to have a community. And so Richard found these beautiful warehouses on the river in Hammersmith, slightly out of the center, about 20 minutes out of London. And they tore one down and made a kind of green space in the middle. And then people who made architectural models took one floor, and then there were people who did stained glass windows, and there were framers, there were designers, and it was a kind of community, but there was no place to eat. And so I remember we were looking at proposals for this little space that we had for a restaurant cafe, and I said, you know what, maybe I'll do it. And it was such a kind of shocking thing to think. And then I called Rose. We went and looked at this little site in this beautiful space. And we said, let's do it. And so we started together. And, sadly, she passed away in 2010. But, we had a good 25 years together, working
That's
together.
incredible.
It was a great partnership, yeah.
I feel like the best things happen out of that type of organic curiosity and just like, let's do a thing.
Yeah, that's just,
and see what comes of it.
And how do you find working with a group of people? How do you actually do what you do with the people you work with?
But we have a saying that we say, community builds immunity. So we feel like the more heads at the table, sometimes there can be too many cooks at the kitchen.
Yeah.
But I think the nature of the partnership within Ghetto Gastro is like everybody has a different expertise that complements each other. Like, so I think this kind of subversiveness to challenge stereotypes and what people might expect when they see people that look like me and my partners. And like culinary was like the last thing that they were thinking about. And now I think we're thinking a little bit differently. Like to be able to have a place for people to come. We have a spot in Tokyo that we kind of use as a hub for collaborations and let other people come and use the space. But we're starting to think about maybe having like a little test kitchen in New York City.
Important. I was really interested after the pandemic. If you'd asked me, what's important in a city, I'd say museums or obviously schools and hospitals and galleries and parks. And then when we had to close restaurants for 6 months and we opened again, people came back and they were crying. They just somehow being out in a restaurant where other people were eating, seeing your friends you didn't know were there, the spontaneity of food, it brings people together.
It's real community. And it's also just a very human thing, right? We all have to eat.
Yeah.
And like you say, the connection with memories and a dish, a smell, a taste, the environment.
I think that teaching where our food comes from is something they take with them when they leave. And that feeling when somebody comes up to you and says, Ruthie, I have to talk to you. And I go, okay, how long? When are you going? Where are you going? And I always say, well, as long as you continue to cook, go. And as long as you know that you can always come home. If things don't work, you can come back. And I think what they take, I hope, is the values of how you behave in the kitchen, that we don't shout, that we're polite, that we teach through hope rather than fear.
They always say people don't remember what you did to them, but how you make them feel. So.
Yeah.
Or what you say, but how you make them feel.
I think it's such a kind of privilege just to sit next to you and hear what you're doing and, the work that you're doing and the people you've inspired and the social implications of what you do. So I really, really appreciate you being here.
The privilege is mine.
Thanks.
We got to do it again.
We got to do it again.
Yes, yes.